Evening, everyone. Hope you've all had a great Christmas. And after stocking up on all sorts of nutrients over the last couple of days, who am I kidding? It was Christmas, no nutrients were involved. We've arrived at the Sakhir International Circuit for the Bahrain Grand Prix. We've got our first repeat winner of the season last week in the form of Jay Hartnell. And the Haas driver made a further championship statement as well. Who can respond tonight? 5.4 kilometres of racetrack await. 29 times over for our racers this evening. They're heading into the second half of this season in Tier 2. This is where wins and podiums really count. Jack Bowie comes into tonight in the lead of the championship. But who's to say he will be there by the end of the evening? It's been such a tumultuous campaign so far for pretty much all of our drivers. It has been so difficult to find consistent form for a multitude of reasons, not least of which has simply been the competitiveness of every single driver in the field so far in Season 7 in Tier 2. Just about then, ready to go for qualifying. The green light is on at the end of the pit lane. And the drivers just finalising those setup changes, making sure they've got everything as they want it, ready to go for the start of qualifying in Bahrain. 14 drivers taking the start of qualifying this evening, and out into the pit lane then has come the Ferrari, or the pit exit I should say, has come the Ferrari of Becco, who is one of our pole sitters this season, remarkably, through awful bad luck, not one of our race winners. And you may notice as well, all of our drivers tonight, all 14 drivers taking the grid tonight, taking qualifying and the start of the race, they're all wearing black race helmets, and that is because, really sadly, Jack Bowie lost his grandmother earlier on today. And a horrible loss for him. He is still racing tonight. Dreadful news for Jack Bowie earlier on. And thoughts go out to him and his family and his grandmother's loved ones, all of her loved ones, at this very, very difficult time. And the drivers brilliantly coming together in solidarity for Jack, and all wearing black race helmets for this Bahrain Grand Prix. It's beautiful to see. Our condolences go out to Jack and his family at this time. And everybody at the Formula Racing League is thinking of Jack, his family and his grandmother's loved ones right now, including all of the drivers with this brilliant show of respect, wearing these black race helmets for the Bahrain Grand Prix tonight. Becco then, across the start-finish line, he begins his first flying lap of qualifying. And in towards the heavy braking zone of turn 1 he goes. Clips the apex of 1. Finds turn 2. Does he cut turn 2? Nope. Does well to avoid invalidating his lap time. It's easy to do at this circuit, particularly on the exit of turn 4, which of course is where Max Verstappen had to give up the win to Lewis Hamilton almost 2 years ago now, after going wide there. Becco losing the back end. The first sector split time is 28.8 as he makes his way down towards the braking zone of the hairpin of turn number 8. Clips the late apex and then makes his way up the hill in towards the double left of 9 and 10. So easy to lock up, but he does brilliantly, Becco. That's a superb run through 9 and 10. Flicks open the DRS rear wing again down the back straight, which brings him in towards there, the ascent up the hill. Easy to lose the back end as well. There's a fair bit of camber going on the exit of the corner. But he's negotiated it well enough and through 12 in towards 17.0 so far in this lap for Becco. It's been a decent start to it on the soft tyres, which for some reason had a bit of a yellow kind of hue to them as from the camera angle from the back as Becco rounds the final corner of turn 50. There's actually 2 corners within that one. I don't know why, but anyway, 29 from Becco to open his account for qualifying. Is out as well for Aston Martin as Sells goes to second place for the Haas team. A 1:30.0, so 1 second off the pace of Beko so far. Here comes Kaizen then, and has he backed out of his lap? He has indeed, so not happy then with how that one was going, and he's decided to come round and have another go. By the looks of it, Cavalis is about to begin a flying lap of his own. We have got the Williams of Nivi out there as well right now. He's coming towards the end of his first flying lap of the session so far, and that takes him into P3 on a 1:30.5. Kaizen's lap time isn't really representative yet. Daz Parker into P4 with a 31.2. Daz so far this season, 4 points finishes from 5 races, a non-finish as well. Last time out at the Canadian Grand Prix, his teammate Carlos is just up the road. He's just begun a lap, and Mystery goes into second place for Alfa Romeo. Mystery and Carlos have both scored 2 podiums in the last 3 races, so they're looking to keep up their pretty good form of late. Good form is hard to come by in this series, not through any fault of the drivers particularly, as I say, just through the extreme level of competitiveness that there has been throughout the field. Cavalis makes his way into turn 11 for Red Bull. Can be a dark horse at the front at times, Cavalis. But at the moment, he's only got 1 points finish to show for his efforts in Season 7. This is his 5th entry. Oh, and that's a spin for the Haas of Butzel's, who has just got off on the exit of turn 13. Cavalis, though, makes his way into the final couple of corners for Red Bull. Kaizen, meanwhile, has gone P4, 1:30.1. Cavalis goes P3 on a 1:29.7. So 3 drivers now into the 1:29s at the top of the timesheet. Bahrain is on a lap at the moment for AlphaTauri, and he has got a purple first sector, fractionally quicker than that of Beko earlier on. Lorenzo into second place for AlphaTauri. One of our 3 pole sitters this season, the others being Beko and Kaizen. Pole sitters all from different teams in AlphaTauri, Aston Martin and Ferrari. Interesting actually that those are the only 3 pole sitters. We have had some fantastic qualifying performances so far this season, but those are the only 3 that have ended up taking pole in qualifying itself. Beko started on pole position for the Canadian Grand Prix, but it was Kaizen who set the pole position lap time earlier on before that sprint race, as Lorenzo makes his way into turn 9 and 10. Feasibly, you could potentially say that there was no real pole sitter in Canada, because officially you only actually count as being a pole sitter if you then convert the pole into the sprint race win. So it's feasible that there could be no pole sitter in a race weekend, which doesn't really make any sense whatsoever, but does in Formula 1 these days. Cavalis makes his way into the pits for Red Bull. And there is Ampandro on lap at the moment for the AlphaTauri team, having just finished lap 1:29.7 for the Faenza-based team. There is Carlos as he makes his way into the pits for Mercedes, one of our race winners this season, one of our early championship contenders, really. But yeah, it's not an awful lot to show for it as late. A driver who potentially needs to find a little bit of form right now, and there's certainly nothing to say that he can't do so. We're looking at FRL Jammy at the moment. First appearance in Season 7 in Tier 2 for the McLaren driver across the start-finish line to go into P1. It's a 1:29.0. That's a very good introduction to the Formula Racing League's second tier for Jammy. And he displaces Beko at the top of the time screens for now. Oh, Beko spins. And where's that? That is on the exit of the final corner. And so he was on a lap. I'm not entirely sure whether it was about to be a brilliant lap from Beko, but it certainly isn't now, because he's just lost it on the final corner. And that's going to be... well, he's going to be in a pretty poor mood after that one for the next few minutes, having done all the work to get the lap to where he did, and then all of a sudden it all goes a little straight. Here comes Jack Bowie then. And fantastic mentality, actually, from him to get racing tonight. He did suffer a big loss earlier on. It is so amazing to come together like this and wear these black helmets and just show their support, really, for not a rival or an enemy or whatever, or anything like that, but just as a fellow racer and as a friend, all showing this support for him. It's beautiful to see as Jack Bowie makes his way into turn 4 for the Red Bull team. Our championship leader, having won already this season, or one run race this season in Abu Dhabi, won that from 10th on the grid. That is the furthest back that we have seen a Grand Prix victory so far in Season 7 in the second tier. Gets past the Mercedes of Carlos, I believe it was. Moving out of the way on an outlap at the moment as Jack deploys the DRS on the way down towards number 11. Very ends the apex as he begins the ascent up towards turns 12 and 13. Does Jack. And a purple middle sector for Jack Bowie. Round 13. And heading down the hill now towards the final two corners of 14, 15. Spots the braking point, turns it in to the rather blunt apex, and then he can start to open up the throttle through turn 15. And Jack Bowie here crosses the line and goes P3, a 1:29.0 for the Red Bull man. Mystery out there as well. He finishes his latest lap and stays P5. Does the Alfa Romeo. Carlos has now begun his latest lap. Daz Parker has been out there as well for Mercedes. P12 at the moment. He's actually going to give his teammate a bit of a slipstream on the run down towards turn 4. And then on the exit, I imagine he will move out of the way for Carlos to get through. Well, there's a slow-moving Haas of Butzel's getting out of Carlos's way as he negotiates turns 6 and 7. Daz still just in front of his teammate Carlos. I think they are both on flying laps, actually, so they've kind of run into each other at a very inconvenient time, and this is now costing Carlos a fair bit of lap time as he goes through turn 10. I think he had to back out going into the apex. Daz is going to give him a slipstream to make up for it, and then he'll move out of the way. Into the braking zone, turn 11. Carlos goes a little bit wide, misses the apex, and, well, if that was a strategy for Mercedes to try and get Carlos a slipstream, it probably hasn't worked as well as they wanted it to. Becco goes P1, a 1:28.7 for the Ferrari driver. 6 minutes to go in qualifying. Time for one or two more runs before the race gets underway. Mystery into P5 for Alfa Romeo now. Cavallis sitting P6 at the moment. He is currently on a lap as he heads into turns 9 and 10. Well, Carlos did improve to P4 despite one or two problems being caused after he tripped over his teammate Daz. I almost wonder what could have been had it not been for that disruption in towards turn 10. The slipstream was just about fine afterwards, and certainly on the exit of turn 3 and on the exit of turn 11, that puts pay to that particular effort for him. So for now, he will stay in 8th position. Here's Butzel's, one of our winners so far this season, makes his way into turn number 4. It's a clean exit too. Nicely done that by Butzel's, and he's 5/10 up on his previous best also. And currently sat on a 1:30.0. He can continue this trajectory of improving on his previous best, and he certainly can put himself potentially into the top 4, top 3 area. It really just depends on whether he can nail these final couple of sectors. Butzel's as he exits turn 11, heads in towards the braking zone, turn 10 I should say, heads in towards the braking zone of turn 11, clips the apex nicely, and that's a good run that for Butzel's. Up the hill, he's about to come to the end of the middle sector split as he heads in towards the final part of the lap. He's 9/10 up on his previous best, so this is a very good effort this from Butzel's, and depending on the gains in the final sector, could he potentially trouble Becco for P1 out front. He is fastest right now by just under 0.3 of a second. Around the final corner comes Butzel's. Has been a fantastic run so far this from the Haas driver, and it's P4 as he sets a 1:29.0, but Lorenzo beats that immediately in the AlphaTauri and goes into P2 less than a tenth of a second behind the Ferrari of Becco at the moment. Kaizen peels into the pits for Aston Martin. Mystery out there as well. He's just improved by 2/10 of a second, but he remains in 8th position now for Alfa Romeo. And that then is most of our drivers coming back into the pits. 3.5 minutes to go of qualifying at the Sakhir International Circuit in Bahrain. And Becco currently leading the way in qualifying. A 50% race following. We've got one of our 2 sprint races out of the way. That was last week at the Canadian Grand Prix. And it was the home of our first repeat winner of the season in the form of Jay Hartnell, the last driver, with a really good display. It was unfortunate for Becco having started on pole. Didn't really put a foot wrong during the race, but a safety car ultimately put pay to his chances of the win when he was past the pits by the time it was deployed. His pit stop put him further down the order, and then just to finish everything off, Swinney span in the middle sector, towards the end of the first sector, and took out the Ferrari man, who is yet to win a race this season. Won the sprint race in Canada, but so far little more than that to show for his not unsubstantial efforts thus far in Season 7. He has been a terrific performer, but unfortunately no victories have come of that at the moment. Which, barring 1 or 2 moments of misfortune, they might well have done up to this point. Surely, between now and the end of the season, we will see a victory from the Ferrari driver. Becco is back out there again. 2 minutes to go of qualifying. Now, Kedley has finally joined the session for McLaren, so he'll be able to partake in the race, but not in the main Grand Prix. Becco in towards turn 1 then as he begins what will be his final flying lap of the session. He does technically have time for 2 more, but he's probably only fueled for 1 more as he looks to improve on his previous best lap time so far of a 1:28.764. Currently on provisional pole position is Becco. In towards turn 4 comes the Ferrari. Lorenzo has retired in the pits for AlphaTauri, and it is an improvement in the first sector from Becco. So interesting for Lorenzo to elect not to head back out onto the racetrack for a final run, potentially saving a set of tyres for qualifying is Lorenzo. Not too sure, but I would have thought he might have had a shot at pole position. Jamie certainly has a shot at starting on the front row as a result of that. Becco then makes his way down the back straight for Ferrari. DRS wide open into the braking zone of turn 11. Clips the apex. It's a good run this for Becco so far as he heads up the hill in towards the flat out turn 12. Is sure not to hit the curb too hard. And in towards turn 13 comes the Ferrari. Purple middle sector as well for Becco as he makes his way down the hill in towards 14 and 15. And the Ferrari man here on the exit might just be about to improve on his previous best lap time and secure himself pole position. It is a 1:28.5 from Becco. Is that going to be enough to make sure of pole position tonight in Bahrain? Jack Bowie's out there. Jamie, who we're looking at the moment, is also out on the racetrack. Mpandro improves to 6th position for AlphaTauri. As across the line as well goes Jay Hartnell to begin a flying lap, but sells, let's have a look at him. He has invalidated his lap time, so there'll be no further improvement from him, although he's actually seen the checkered flag, so that's the reason for that one. Becco retiring from the session as well. Jamie now rounds the final corner for McLaren. He's not satisfied with how his lap has been going. He comes back into the pits. Jack Bowie then is the only one at the moment who can potentially take pole position away from Becco. In towards turn 13 he comes, and heading down towards the final couple of corners of 14 and 15. One more braking zone for Jack Bowie to negotiate. Can he take pole position tonight at the Bahrain Grand Prix? Hits the apex of turn 14, round turn 15. And Jack Bowie in the Red Bull. Can he take his first pole of the season? No, he can't. Stays in P4, doesn't improve on his previous best lap time. We have still got Swinney out there as he crosses the line and goes into P4, displaces Jack Bowie. Brilliant late lap from Swinney. And that for him puts him onto the second row of the grid for the race. Kaisen's out there too, but he is down on his previous best time, so there'll be no improvement from him at the moment. The Red Bull of Cavolis is out there as well for Red Bull, although he's across the line to secure P7. Empandro is back into the pits now as well for AlphaTauri. Jay Hartnell is off the track for Haas, so he's going to start 14th and last of our drivers at the beginning of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Butzel's in the end taking 8th position. Jack Bowie forced to settle for 6th, and Carlos getting into 3rd in the end for Mercedes with a late effort of his own. Brilliant lap from Carlos, one of our championship contenders, and that from him is a superb effort to start the Bahrain Grand Prix behind Becco and Lorenzo. And while Lorenzo retiring from the session didn't give him a shot at pole position, didn't cost him a place on the front row, that is relatively important for him. 5 wins from 2nd on the grid. Can he displace Becco, or can Becco get his first win of the season? We'll find out in the not too distant future in Bahrain. Becco then on pole, just under 0.3 of a second clear of Lorenzo in the end. Carlos in P3 for Mercedes, brilliant late run from him. Jamie P4, Swinney in 5th position for Alfa Romeo. Jack Bowie in P6 for Red Bull, just ahead of his teammate Cavolis. Butzel's in 8th place, Empandro in 9th. Kaisen rounds out the top 10. Mystery in 11th position for Alfa Romeo. Daz Parker P12, Nivi 13th, and Jay Hartnell will start this race in 14th position and last of our drivers this evening. So if everyone sees the checkered flag tonight, they will all score points. Becco once again has the point for the pole position, and that makes it 4 now for the season for him. Twice as many as Kaisen and twice as many as Lorenzo. And it maintains the record at the moment of only 3 pole sitters so far in Season 7. The one-lap masterclass of Becco. Evident again, but will it translate this time into a Grand Prix win? We are about to find out. He did start the 50% race in Canada on pole position. In the end, the safety car and Swinney taking away his chances of the win and points in Canada. Swinney, fair play to him, took full responsibility for what happened, reported himself actually in the Discord afterwards, and his hands were immediately up in the air, taking responsibility for that one, which was good to see. Ultimately, it was a mistake in the wet that can happen, does happen, and both drivers able to move on from that one, albeit with a little bit of heartache for Becco, having performed so well throughout the course of last Tuesday evening. It wasn't the best Christmas present for him. Is he about to get a late one tonight at the Bahrain Grand Prix? From pole position, we have had 8 winners before. The number of winners in total is 9. Lewis Hamilton owns 5 victories in Bahrain, making him the most successful driver at this racetrack over the years. And Mercedes have won 3 of the last 5 at this track, with Carlos starting in 3rd position. So all to play for, really. Mercedes Power's taken 4 of the last 5, with Sergio Perez's win at the shortened circuit, if you count that one, of course, in Bahrain. And what a race that was, with George Russell almost taking the win for Mercedes. So unlucky for him, taking Lewis Hamilton's spot in that race, and having looked on for the win not once but twice, denied the victory in the end by a slow puncture on his Mercedes, following a botched pit stop by the team. That's a bit of a botched formation, that for Becco. He spins on the exit of turn 4, then spins again whilst trying to get back onto the circuit, and while this won't affect his starting position for the race, it will affect his tyre temperatures. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting one, actually, for Becco. He will, of course, as I say, be able to just recover to P1. I note as well, Nokedli has come in and he's taken a Ferrari. I'm pretty sure he was supposed to take a McLaren seat, but he's ended up with a Ferrari seat, having joined the session late. His points, I think, will go to McLaren if he finishes the race tonight. Either way, his teammate Jamie up in P4. Superb qualifying performance from him, actually, putting his car on the second row of the grid. It looked for a stage, for a while, as though he was going to be able to take pole position in qualifying, but the brilliance of Becco and Lorenzo, who have been there all season in the top positions, shining through again. Not reflected, though, as I mentioned before, in the championship standings, which are led by Jack Bowie on what is quite an emotional evening for him. And let's see if he can add to his tally of podiums this season. Does have 4 of them, one of them that win in Abu Dhabi. Who is going to be able to take that Grand Prix victory tonight? Becco then, well, he won't arrive on the grid first, but he will start first in Bahrain tonight. He comes through to take his place in the pole position grid slot. Nivi, I noticed, has left the session, but he is not able to rejoin, and so that is it's unfortunate for him. So he's lost connection. He can't quite rejoin the session, so his Williams will be a ghost car, unfortunately, unless his connection magically restores itself. But Becco, he's on pole again. This time, is that going to be converted into a Grand Prix victory at the Sakhir International Circuit? The Bahrain Grand Prix and the 8th round of Season 7 is underway. Bit of wheel spin for Becco. Brilliant start from Lorenzo, who gets past the Ferrari straight away. Carlos as well is getting in there. And Jamie is side by side with one of the Red Bulls. I think of Jack Bowie getting in there down the inside, but he loses momentum. Jamie now tries to get round the outside of Carlos going into turn 2. And Becco has lost all sorts of positions on the exit of turns 1 and 2. He's on the grass heading in towards turn 3. And so in amongst all of that, with the shocking camera angles that we were given, Becco's lost positions off the start, having either been in contact or made a mistake. Either way, that is the Ferrari down to P14. Having started in first, it wasn't the greatest getaway either for Becco. It's a horrible start for him, but Lorenzo leads this Bahrain Grand Prix with Carlos in P2, Jamie up to P3, and Cavallis getting ahead of Jack Bowie to be running in P4 right now. Not the best exit from Carlos out of turn 10, and Jamie's going to try and take advantage of that going into 11. Can he get ahead of the Mercedes? Yes, he can, down the inside of 11. Carlos on the hards and Jamie on the mediums at the start of this race. How important will that be for the context of the Bahrain Grand Prix tonight? We will find out. Becco's up to P13, having got past Jay Hartnell. Nivi rejoined temporarily, but has now left again in the Williams. And so he's going to start shipping positions very quickly. First of all to Kaizen, who will endeavour to make his way past the Williams. He'll be aware that he's got a very pacey Ferrari behind him, and ghosts through Nivi. Lorenzo on to lap 2, 1.3 seconds ahead of Jamie. Becco down towards turn 1, chasing down this ghost car of Nivi, and this should be then a pretty comfortable P12 for Becco. Not quite yet though into turn 1. Despite being a ghost, the Williams still with a fair bit of pace up through turns 1 and 2. And then up towards 3 we go. So despite being a ghost, Nivi putting up quite a good fight here against the Ferrari, but in the end Becco just goes straight through him and into 12th position, with Nivi having disconnected. Swinny's been involved in contact in the opening exchanges of this race. He's just been into the pits, and it's a fresh set of mediums on his Alfa Romeo as he rejoins the racetrack. The gap is down to 1.1 between Lorenzo and Jamie. Still a pretty tight train, actually, going on behind that. Carlos is just about a second back, still on those hard tyres, remember, so that's an important detail come the end of this race. He's under pressure from the Red Bull of Cavallis at the moment, collects the rear end on the exit of turn 12. Jack Bowie is putting Cavallis under a lot of pressure through turn 12 as they head in towards 13. Butzel's is looking an interested driver too, as Cavallis goes slightly wide on the exit of 13. And now down towards 14. Jack Bowie passes Cavallis and gets back ahead of his teammate. Mystery, meanwhile, is looking to go wheel to wheel with Empandro through turn 14. But the AlphaTauri does well to fend off that attack for the time being, but for how much longer can he do so? 132.7 from Jamie to set the fastest lap of the race so far. And Jack Bowie, meanwhile, all sorts going on as the Haas of Butzel's and the Red Bull of Jack Bowie get involved in contact. They both fall down the order. Jack down to P12, Butzel's in P11. As a result, Jay Hartnell in the other Haas gets ahead of Jack Bowie now, and so what was looking like an overtake potentially for the podium places for Jack Bowie has now become P13 with Butzel's running in 11th. So both of those drivers having contact, and sadly for them, falling all the way down the order as a result. Swinney's back into the pits again for Alfa Romeo in the latest bit of drama. Unbelievably, I was too busy looking at the tower on the left-hand side to actually have a look at what was going on with the contact. It's just me being an absolutely fantastic, observant commentator, as always, as Empandro chases Cavallis in towards turn 11. So this is all allow the AlphaTauri driver to make his way up to P5. On the fringes, potentially the podium places, depending on how quickly you can clear Cavallis, if you can clear Cavallis, who almost struggling for front grip at times during the lap. Jack Bowie gets past Jay Hartnell, who I think has made a mistake somewhere, because he's tumbled down the order. He rejoins the circuit heading up towards turn 12. So Jack Bowie gets a little bit of a Christmas present after the contact with Butzel's sent him down the order. Butzel's himself is 2 seconds behind Becco, who now finds himself running inside the top 10. Butzel's into the pits for Haas. Meanwhile, Kaizen and Daz Parker going at it into turn 1. Becco in there as well, pretty hot in the Ferrari. There was a bit of contact between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Up through turn 3 we come. They both got DRS. Becco has the better run. And in towards turn 4 we go. Becco down the inside, and Daz Parker can't really fight it from there. The Ferrari up then into 9th position. It was a little bit dicey for a moment, and it almost looked as though Becco had gone in too hot, but they sorted themselves out, and that is Becco up into 9th as a result. Empandro still just behind Cavallis, who is 0.8 of a second back from Carlos, so he's managed to get himself to within DRS range of the Mercedes, which is helping him stay ahead of the AlphaTauri. Mystery has very much joined this battle as well, half a second back from Empandro. So we've got both Cavallis and Empandro looking forwards and looking in their wing mirrors as well. Now Kedley will try and join this battle in the Ferrari, which I think is supposed to be a McLaren, but it is a Ferrari. And behind them, Becco 0.7 of a second back from Kaizen. So Becco's recovery isn't going too badly at the moment. He is on the back of this train. Meanwhile, Cavallis here might just be about to get this move done on Carlos, because he's so close through the final corner. Jamie with the fastest lap isn't quite within DRS range yet of Lorenzo. Down towards turn 1 we go. Carlos getting close, Cavallis getting closer to Carlos. Looks at the inside of the turn 1, but Carlos breaks late and stays in front. And again, I think we've said this a few times this season about Carlos, but he has got the advantage of being on the harder tyres, and the longer he can keep these guys behind him, the better it's going to be for his race. Meanwhile, Becco, I think, has made another mistake. He has through turn 1, loses out to Daz Parker as a result, might lose out to Jack Bowie as well as they head in towards turn 4. I think he's just about regathered his momentum, and Jack Bowie has to stay behind in P11. So lots of drivers involved and lots of incidents early on. Jack Bowie and Becco certainly among them in the early going of this race. Jack was telling me earlier, whilst braking, when he was just after breaking the horrible news about his grandmother, as Carlos actually falls down the order now, and he's lost 3 positions in 1 as Carlos, having, I think, made a mistake in the middle sector. Was telling me, Jack, that he's hoping, of course, to add to his tally of podiums this evening, and he may well do. Just because he's not had the best start of this race, absolutely is no indication whatsoever that he cannot get a good result out of this one. And again, it's brilliant to have him here, and a super, really just testament to him, really, that he is racing this evening after the horrible news earlier on. As down towards turn 1 then comes Carlos, looking to regain a couple of those positions. Meanwhile, Mystery and Empandro going at it again. Mystery this time gets ahead of Embandro. Can he get it stopped into turn 1? Well, he's missed the apex slightly. Is that going to be a chance now for the AlphaTauri to get back in front? It's a good run for Mystery through 2 and 3. And is that going to be enough here as we head in towards turn 4? And it is. Embandro not quite able to get ahead just yet, although Mystery slightly missing the apex of turn 4. I think more out of sympathy than anything else. He was aware that Embandro might well try and stick his nose down the inside. As wide goes Carlos, that's a chance surely for Nakedli into turn 8. No, Carlos recovers well, but Nakedli certainly has been brought into play by that little mistake from the Mercedes driver. He was holding on very well, Carlos, for a few laps, but unfortunately his descent has begun. He's hoping to arrest it, but running wide at turn 7 won't have done him too many favours, has to be said. Kaizen has joined the back of this train now in 8th position. Bit of a disappointing qualifying really for Kaizen. Wasn't up at the pointy end as he would have liked to have been. One of our race winners this season, one of our pole sitters too. 2 pole positions for him in season 7. Looking to join this train to get potentially onto the podium places. Jamie still tantalisingly close to DRS range on Lorenzo. 0.8 of a second back now, and so by the time they get to the DRS zone between turns 2 and 3, he should get the benefit of the rear wing opening up and an extra 12 miles an hour down the straight. Indeed he does, so it's quite important now. And how much does the McLaren gain? Quite a lot. He's half a second back now from Lorenzo, so a good 2 or 3 tenths gain there, just in that little bit, a little patch while he had DRS, so it's quite important for him. Jamie with the purple middle sector as well for McLaren. So his race pace is looking fantastic at the moment. Jack Bowie's in the pits for Red Bull. Hard tyres on the car for him. Nivi will get ahead of him, and I think Nivi is still a ghost car, still hasn't managed to reconnect to the session, so Jack Bowie should be able to make pretty light work of the Williams driver. Up ahead, Embandro, 0.7 of a second back from Mystery, who doesn't quite have DRS on Cavolis at the moment. The Red Bull driver occupying that 3rd and final podium position as it stands. But again, plenty of time to go. Oh, Jamie's made a mistake. He's gone off the circuit, up the hill in towards turn 12 as he rejoins the racetrack. And Nokedli's in there, and Jamie's down the inside of Carlos. And he's going to lose a bit of momentum as a result. Nokedli will try and take advantage of that, although Jamie here, look at it, come straight back at Carlos into turn 14. Carlos gives him room. Jamie, I think, gets a bit caught up on the inside, and now that's a chance for Nokedli, who gets past him, and it might also be an opportunity for Kaizen to get ahead as well, although the McLaren with some brilliant straight line speed down the home straight in towards turn 1 again. Carlos under pressure, down the inside go both Nokedli and Jamie. Carlos looks to cut back underneath them. And we've got the Ferrari and the McLaren side by side through turns 2 and 3. There's almost a little bit of contact as Nokedli gets in front. Carlos now gets back ahead of the McLaren. Kaizen still in this battle as he goes round the outside of Jamie through towards turn 4. And they're wheel to wheel on the exit. But Jamie's lost the position. And from 2nd place, looking for 1st place, Jamie has fallen all the way down to 8th place. And we're not done there because Kaizen now to the outside of Carlos. Heading up the hill in towards turns 9 and 10. Jamie's still involved in that if Kaizen makes a mistake, which he does not into turn 10. And so Nokedli, the biggest winner out of that really, climbing up to P5. Carlos and Kaizen then getting past Jamie as well, just about. Somehow, there wasn't any serious contact in amongst any of that. And those 4 can carry on their way. Really good battle there. Nice and clean as well. But for Jamie, he was looking for the lead of this race, and has he lost his front wing there, Jamie? Trying to just figure out. I think he has, you know. Not too sure what has happened there to FRL Jamie, but he has lost his whole front wing. So I think he's made contact with Kaizen somewhere after losing those positions. So, oh, what a horrible lap that is. That's the worst lap of Jamie's league racing career, perhaps. Not great. Again, though, 21 laps to go to salvage this one for Jamie. He'll be hoping for a safety car as well, potentially, in that time. On go a set of hard tyres to potentially take him to the end of the Grand Prix. So, well, it's not curtains at the moment for the McLaren, but it certainly does make this a much more difficult task. It's a real shame, having been in contention for the win. He's kind of all gone away from him there. Jay Hartnell, well, the back end's gone away from him again in the Haas. He's in P13 right now. Unfortunately, has been pointing the wrong way a couple of times in this race. All of that now has put Kavalis into P2, with Mystery now putting him under pressure in third place. Empandro is on the back of that battle as well in the AlphaTauri, so he's clinging on to it. Hasn't left Mystery alone since the Alfa Romeo got past him. Mystery's got his hands full trying to pass Kavalis right now. There's a little bit of a train behind the Red Bull currently. He's doing well though to fend them off so far, but we are only 9 laps into this race. It's given Lorenzo quite a big lead, all of this, 7.2 seconds for him. So he's got the luxury of being able to just relax a little bit if he wants to and stroke home some consistent lap times on his mediums. Take them further into the Grand Prix. Daz Parker has picked up the first penalty of the evening for Mercedes. Kavalis goes defensive. Mystery chooses not to partake in any of those games. He stays out of the slipstream for now, potentially just trying to keep his brakes and his tyres nice and cool. There are generally warm track and air temperatures in Bahrain, which do get cooler, of course, going into the night. Hard tyres on for Daz Parker then in the Mercedes, making it 4 drivers on hards at the moment. Jay Hartnell is one of them, but the other 3 have all pitted on to, 5 drivers on those tyres. Carlos and Jay started on the hards, and then we've had Daz Parker, Jamie and Jack Bowie all pitting onto the hards since the start of the race. And Bandros fallen out of DRS range up to Mystery, who is close to doing the same thing up to Kavalis, and indeed he has now fallen a second back from the Red Bull, but not before the detection zone, and so he's able to open the rear wing again and probably get himself back to within range. Meanwhile, Jay Hartnell's got back ahead of the ghost car of Nivi. Jamie, having made his pit stop, is just behind Daz Parker, who has recently come into the pits as well for Mercedes. Jamie potentially thinking about the move down the inside. Daz Parker makes a mistake out of turn 8 and up towards 9 and 10. Jamie, does he get in front? Daz Parker thought about defending the inside, but he didn't have the line really. And Jamie gets in front as a result. They've got Jack Bowie just behind them as well, looking to make a recovery of his own after his contact with Butzells, who is now down in P14 for Haas. So this race hasn't gone particularly well for him, nor has it gone well at all for Swinney in the Alfa Romeo. 2 pit stops early on in this race and remains in P15. He's another one that kind of needs a safety car right now, really. Interestingly, Kavalis has closed the gap to Lorenzo by half a second since we last checked in on the battle for the lead. So we'll keep an eye on that one, actually, because that is coming down, isn't it, that gap? And we'll see how much Kavalis can reduce it by before the pit stops. He would like it to be a little bit lower than that, really, before they make the first stop going into the second stint. It has now gone back up to 7.2 seconds, so Lorenzo, having lost a few tenths, has responded to that and opened the gap back out again to the Red Bull. Being in the lead as he has been for pretty much the entirety of this race so far. In fact, he has been in the lead for the entirety of it. He has the luxury really of being able to look after his tyres a little bit better. Butzells in P14 for Haas sets the fastest lap of the race thus far. So as it stands, he'll be taking home that point. Empandro has managed to get back to within a second of Mystery, who has now fallen 1.1 behind Kavalis, 0.8 of a second separating those two. So it'll be interesting now to see if the AlphaTauri is going to be able to respond and get back ahead of the Alfa Romeo, having lost that position a few laps ago. Carlos is within a second as well of Nokedli. Lost P3 earlier on. Did Carlos tumble down the order into the pits behind him? Comes Kaizen. Kavalis is in as well for Red Bull. That's quite important. So he goes first, Kavalis, of those front runners. And does Lorenzo respond to that is going to be the question. Importantly for Kavalis there as well, he didn't have to wait for Kaizen. He was released just before the Aston Martin got to him, and so he wasn't held for any longer than he needed to be, which is vital for him if he is to get the undercut on Lorenzo. He won't undercut him and get ahead of him, but he might undercut him and get closer to him as a result of this. So does Lorenzo respond to that? Does he go longer? Remains to be seen. Carlos, meanwhile, is just behind Nokedli in this race for 4th position. We've got a yellow flag in Sector 2 because we have had, I think, it's a slow-moving Swinney who has just made a mistake through turns 11 and 12, and so his evening, unfortunately, doesn't look to be getting any better at the moment. Carlos with DRS, and another yellow flag through, not too sure where that was actually. It was very momentary, but that's gone back in again. The two Haas drivers are actually going at it right now, or they're close to it anyway. Jay Hartnell chasing down his teammate Bud Sells in a battle for 12th position. Haas are the only team this season to have more than one winner emerge from the outfit, and so it's a little bit of a surprise to see them down in P12 and P13. Lorenzo, meanwhile, has responded to Cavallis' stop, so into the pits he comes. His teammate Empandro leads the race as a result. Mystery and Nakedley have both made their way in as well. As you would expect, it is hard tyres on the car for Lorenzo, hards on for Mystery, and hards on for Nakedley as well. Mystery and just realised what I said. Mystery and Nakedley making their way out of the pits. Wasn't very PG, that, was it? Cavallis, meanwhile, then, he's behind Mystery after that. That's surprising, actually. So Mystery gets the overcut on Cavallis because of all of that. I don't know if Cavallis made a mistake somewhere on his outlap, but Mystery gets in front of him, which is very surprising, actually. We're yet to see Empandro's pit stop. I don't know if he's going to overcut Cavallis too. It'll be very difficult to do so. Wide goes Mystery, and into turn 8 then. Cavallis thinks about the move down the inside. Mystery defends it. Cavallis on the exit, heading up towards turns 9 and 10, will be fancying himself potentially for a move into turn 11 if he can get a good exit here. So, having pitted to try and get the undercut on Lorenzo, he's actually ended up being passed by Mystery and is further away from Lorenzo than he was. Down the inside he goes then. Cavallis into turn 11 does get back ahead of Mystery, but can the Alfa Romeo cut back underneath him? He can, and he can't quite stay wheel to wheel though into turn 12, and Cavallis has got that move done. Into the pits comes the other AlphaTauri of Empandro, Becco, who was up to P3 after all of those pit stops, is now into the pits himself, and so the hard tyres are ready from the Ferrari pit crew. On they go on Becco's car. Where are they going to rejoin is the question. Empandro, is he going to be ahead here of Cavallis and Mystery? This will be tight. Mystery's back down the inside of Cavallis going into turn 1, but Cavallis will defend it by braking later on the outside. He does, but Empandro is ahead of both of them, so the overcut, really interesting that, the overcut is paying dividends massively compared to the undercut. Mystery's down the inside of Cavallis again, heading into turn 4, and this time has he got in? There's almost contact on the exit. Wheel to wheel through 5. Mystery somehow doesn't spin after that. Through turn 7, he's still there, Mystery. In towards turn 8, Cavallis again braking late on the outside. It's brave stuff from both of them. Mystery slightly loses the back end on the exit of turn 8, and Cavallis survives for now. Whilst that was going on, Nakedley and Jamie, Nakedley and Kaizen were going at it. Nakedley trying to get ahead of the Aston Martin, not quite able to do so at the moment. And these two, because of the battle in front, have been brought into that battle for 4th place. So we've got Kaizen and Nakedley both involved now in that fight going on between Cavallis, Mystery, and really Empandro's in there too, because he is only 7/10 of a second up the road, just under, from Cavallis. Here now comes Kaizen, looking to get past Mystery, having been defending from Nakedley not too long ago. And the Aston Martin's already there on the exit of turn 14, heading on to the home straight. He's passed him then, or is he? It's a wheel-to-wheel drag race, and Mystery, I think, has got his nose in front in towards turn 1, but Kaizen's got the inside, and he leaves space for Mystery into turn 2, but he's got the superior run heading through 2 and 3, and he does get in front, and Nakedley is there trying to see if he can get his nose down the inside after that. Can't quite. Cavallis now has his sights set very much on Empandro for P3, but Sells with the fastest lap again in 12th position. Carlos is still going on his hard tyres. He really is, I think, going to be in play here, Cavallis, for the final stages of this race in the battle for the win. Carlos and Lorenzo both looking to become repeat winners and join Jay Hartnell on that list this season. And Bander looking to win a race for the first time this season, but he's under real pressure from Cavallis and Kaizen and Mystery behind him. Mystery's right behind Kaizen. Hasn't given up on keeping hold of P5 or retaking P5. Behind them, Becco is 2 seconds back from Jamie as he looks to continue his recovery. I think the win is probably gone now for Becco unless we get a safety car. Safety cars, as we've seen before, do breed more of them in this league. So certainly isn't to be ruled out. Only once in the last 5 races has pole position been converted into a victory in Bahrain. So Becco having started on pole. Certainly looks as though that trend in Bahrain is going to continue. As up through turns 3 and in towards 4 we go. Mystery with Nokedi just behind, with Kaizen just in front. This battle for the final podium place is, well, it hasn't quite gone stale because Kaizen is right there with Cavallis, but Cavallis at the moment isn't able to make up too much ground on Mbandera right now. The AlphaTauri's driving very well indeed, putting in some consistent lap times. It's Cavallis who now looks under more pressure than the AlphaTauri because the Aston Martin of Kaizen is right there behind him, 0.3 of a second back. 0.4 now as they make their way down towards turn 11. Mystery and McKedley still both involved in the battle. Becco slowly making up ground on Jamie. It is slow progress at the moment for him. 11.5 seconds now separating Carlos and Lorenzo as Carlos begins lap number 17 of 29. Still going on his hard tyres. Still very much believing, and with good reason I'm sure, that he can win this Grand Prix. He'll have fresher tyres and softer tyres as well than Lorenzo towards the end. This really is going to be an interesting finish. Daz Parker's left the session for Mercedes. That's 2 now who've lost connection tonight. Not sure if it's an issue with the servers or whatever it might be. Kaizen has a look at Cavallis, but can't really go down the inside of Cavallis without creaming the side of Mbandera, which is the issue for him right now. Cavallis gets a good run through turn 2 and in towards turn 3. Is it good enough in towards turn 4? Not quite. Nokedi having a look at Mystery, who covers the inside heading in towards turn 4 and stays ahead of the, let's say, the Ferrari dressed McLaren as they come through the end of the first sector. It's a good run that for Nokedi through turn 7, but thinks better of the move into turn 8 for the moment. For how much longer, well, that remains to be seen. In towards 9 and 10 come Cavallis and Kaizen, who is perhaps just looking for a mistake here from the car in front to try and get past him, because a late move down the inside isn't really plausible right now with the presence of the AlphaTauri just in front of the Red Bull. Can't really afford to make a mistake in the braking zone and lose a bit of time, lose the back end, because he has got 2 drivers right behind him looking to take that position. Carlos in the pits for Mercedes. Off go the hards and on go the mediums. So this is where this race comes alive then. Carlos on fresher, softer rubber than Lorenzo. He should rejoin still in second position. Or will he? Oh, that's going to be tight as he gets into the pit exit. In fact, no, he won't be. He's going to be behind. Oh, that's a big move from Kaizen down the inside. That's a fantastic move. It's a brilliant move from Kaizen. Up to P3 goes the Aston Martin. He saw his chance. He went for it. And boy, did he take it. Brilliant stuff from the Aston Martin to get ahead of Cavallis. And Kaizen then takes P3 in the final podium position away from the Red Bull. Mystery is ahead and Carlos is down to 7th as a result of all of that. So he was in the mix, but all of a sudden he wasn't, because he got passed by a whole train of cars coming down towards turn 1. I thought he was going to be able to keep at least one of those positions, but he couldn't. P7 for the Mercedes, and that, well, his chances of the win have taken a bit of a turn for the worse, because he's now stuck in this DRS train. behind Nokedli. If he would have rejoined around P4, P5, it would have been a little bit of a sweeter pill to swallow, but it's quite a bitter one now. Has to make up 6 positions to get this win, and he is, well, how far off the lead? Quite a way. 13.6 seconds off the lead is Carlos now, with several cars between himself and the leader, so it's going to be difficult. This Mystery is right behind Cavallis now as he looks to take P4 away from him. Kaizen is looking to take P2 away from Empandro down towards turn 1. The AlphaTauri goes defensive. The Aston Martin gets closer. Meanwhile, Mystery's under pressure as well from Nokedli in towards turn 1. Nokedli gets down the inside of the Alfa Romeo, gets ahead of Mystery, who is forced down to P6. Carlos looking to take that position away as well. Meanwhile, Kaizen has got the move done now on Empandro, takes P2 away, and Carlos is ahead of Mystery. Is he? Oh yes, he is. Mystery spins on the exit of turn 4, and that cost him a place to Jamie and to Becco, and potentially ultimately to Jack Bowie as well. Not quite. Jay Hartnell gets a penalty for exceeding track limits meanwhile, and whilst all that's going on, Carlos is lapping Nivi in his pursuit of Nokedli, who goes a bit wide through turn 10. Is that the chance for Carlos to get ahead of him going in towards turn 11? He's made up one of those positions, has Carlos. So the win might be gone, but is second place still on with his medium tyres? We'll see. He's got to start reeling off these positions. He's got 10 laps to go after this one to get that done. It's doable for sure as Lorenzo rounds the final corner and begins lap 20 of the race. And Carlos then is ahead of Nokedli heading in towards turn 14. So up to 5th place now goes the Mercedes. So, yep, second place very much is on for the Mercedes as Cavallis goes defensive down towards turn 1. I don't think Nokedli's quite done with Carlos yet, and he isn't, and he is going to try maybe to have a look into turn 1, but in the end, discretion the better part of valor for him. And Empandro and Kaizen are going back at it, going through turn 1. Kaizen defends the position for now, but Empandro's got DRS again. In fact, no, he doesn't. It is Kaizen with DRS in towards turn 4. Empandro forced to stay behind as a result. Cavallis is looking to retake his podium position, with Carlos just behind in P5 on his medium tyres compared to hards for those around him. So what a brilliant end to the race we're going to have here, and that's a mistake from Cavallis, and Carlos puts his nose in Mercedes, and Cavallis looks to have recovered by the time they get to the braking zone of turn 10, having just gone through 9, and indeed Cavallis stays in front for now, with Nokedli still looking an interested party behind that. Jamie and Becco have just about caught this battle, and Carlos is down the inside of Cavallis heading into turn 11, has to collect the back end, and Cavallis has a look at getting back past him through turn 12. Carlos leaves space, then goes wide, and then eventually missing the apex of turn 13 despite staying in front. And now then, Cavallis looking to have a go back, potentially heading in towards turn 14. He'll get a good run down the home straight. Carlos does have DRS to Empandro in front of him. Empandro himself chasing down Kaizen for P2. Carlos under pressure now then from Cavallis, heading in towards 1. He goes defensive in the Mercedes, stays ahead of Cavallis, who can't really dive down the inside because he too is going to be faced with that same problem, that he's going to end up hitting the back of Empandro if he does so. Carlos with a slight back end loss through turns 2 and 3. And is that the chance for Cavallis? Not quite. Can't get down the inside just yet. And Carlos holds on to the P4 that he's just gained from the Red Bull. 2 more positions to make up then to climb to second place in Bahrain. And barring anything major happening out front, Lorenzo should still hold on to the win. Into the pits then has come Butzel's for Haas. Soft tyres on the car, and so he'll finish outside the top 10, but that will still be a points finish, of course. The top 15 getting points, and there's only 15 drivers in this race. And he'll also try and get the extra point for the fastest lap of the race. Jay Hartnell also in. So it's a battle between the Haas drivers to get the fastest lap, but both drivers really have taken a bit of a hit in terms of their championship aspirations tonight. So it hasn't been ideal for them. Carlos now Let's have a look. Empahanda has actually fallen outside of DRS range now of Kaizen, and so that surely will be a chance for Carlos to get ahead of the AlphaTauri. Through turn 14 we go, in towards 15, and here comes the opportunity. Wide goes Nokedli in the background, and down towards turn 1 then comes Carlos, and he pulls to the side of Empandro, and he gets ahead of the AlphaTauri, and into third place then goes Carlos. So he is up ahead of him. Oh, he gets a penalty though for cutting turn 2. That could be important come the end of this race, because there's few drivers on penalties right now. But that really could cost him a podium, perhaps. Carlos, as he looks to stay in this title hunt. Lorenzo making a pretty emphatic title statement right now, leading this race by 12 seconds. Championship leader Jack Bowie still down in 10th place at the moment. And Lorenzo, so far, is the holder of the only victory from pole position thus far in Belgium this season. The other 6 poles have all gone the other way. Jack Bowie winning from the furthest down in 10th position in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Cavalis still chasing down Empandro. And we have got Lorenzo out there in the other AlphaTauri in P1. This would be a good points haul this for AlphaTauri if they're able to hold on to what they've got. Empandro might still believe now with Carlos's penalty that he can keep his place on the podium, but he's under real pressure now from Cavalis. And Empandro does have DRS, but Cavalis is getting very close indeed to the back of the AlphaTauri here. And in towards turn 1 we go. Cavalis down the inside. No, Empandro breaks later and stays in front of the Red Bull. It's a great bit of breaking that from Empandro to stay in front. In amongst all of that, by the way, Jamie has lost out to Beko and to Mystery in the Alfa Romeo. All of that taking place in the last couple of laps whilst we've been watching this battle. Carlos then, 7/10 of a second back, 8/10 of a second now from Kaizen, who himself is 11.5 behind Lorenzo. So Lorenzo's just given up a little bit of time out front. I think just looking after his tyres really at the moment. 1:30.6 from Butzel's the fastest lap of the race. Lorenzo isn't in need of pushing right now in the leading AlphaTauri car. In towards turn 11 we go then, with Carlos chasing down Kaizen. Haven't had a Honda Power victory in Bahrain before. We have had 4 podium finishes through Honda Power over the years. Jenson Button with the first of them in the first ever Bahrain Grand Prix in 2004 for BAR Honda. And that was 2 years before he took a 4th place finish for the Honda team in 2006. And Max Verstappen and Alex Albon both finishing on the podium in 2020 in Bahrain. Before Max Verstappen again took a podium finish last year, start of the 2021 season, in 2nd place after his battle with Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes for the win. Carlos in the Mercedes looking to pass the Mercedes powered Aston Martin for P2. Meanwhile, Jamie has gotten past Mystery for P8, so that's him back up a position. Cavalis still going at it with Empandro. Meanwhile, Nokedli's defending from Beko right now, down towards turn 8. Beko thought about it into the braking zone, but doesn't go for it at the moment. Behind them, Mystery's retaken 8th place from Jamie in towards turn 4, so that battle ongoing. Meanwhile, Carlos getting very close now to Kaizen in towards turn 11. Surely it's a matter of time now before the Mercedes clears the Aston Martin. 3/10 of a second back from Kaizen as they head up through turn 12. He has got to make a gap though, Carlos, with his penalty. Got to make sure that he's a few seconds up the road from Kaizen if he does manage to overtake him as they head down the hill in towards turn 14. Meanwhile, Empandro still holding on to 4th behind Carlos and in front of Cavalis. And he is within range right now, is Empandro, to take the position back away from Carlos. Here comes the Mercedes though. Kaizen tries to go defensive. Carlos gets down the inside anyway. Kaizen, is he going to have the better run? Yes, he is. Through turn 1. Stays in front, but what sort of a run is Carlos going to have as he comes through turn 3? Up towards 4 we go. It's Kaizen with DRS, and he stays in front. Behind them, Becco looking at passing the Kedley in towards turn 4. Now Kedley gives Becco space, but Becco stays behind for now. And Jammy has got back ahead of Mystery, but for how much longer? Because Mystery tries to go around the outside at turn 4 and isn't quite able to get back ahead of the McLaren. So 8th place for Jammy. Becco at the moment having to settle for 7th. It's another race, it's another pole position which has gone awry for Becco this season, and he will remain winless in season 7. We've had 3 wins from 3rd on the grid this season. It's the most of any grid position. Lorenzo started 2nd tonight. Going to be a win from 2nd for him in Bahrain, unless something goes terribly wrong in the final few laps for the AlphaTauri man. Kaizen defending brilliantly here from Carlos, and the longer he keeps him behind, even if Carlos gets in front, Kaizen will still have a chance of staying within 3 seconds and getting that podium position away from him. Yellow flags somewhere, which have quickly gone away again. And towards turn 1, Carlos thought about it, doesn't go for it yet. On Kaizen, he'll wait for the run up through towards turn 4. Will Carlos? That's a good strategy, that, to try and get ahead of the Aston Martin. As up towards turn 4 we go, and again Kaizen will go defensive, and again Carlos will have to stay behind him, and this is going to be frustrating for the Mercedes, who knows that he's got to generate this gap of 3 seconds to try and hold on to this podium place. And the longer he's stuck behind Kaizen as well, the more chance Ed Bandro has of staying within 3 seconds. And in fact, the AlphaTauri is now back to within a second of the Mercedes in this podium fight. So Ed Bandro may yet score his first podium of the season this evening. Lorenzo is going to get his 4th win, as well as his 4th podium, I should say, as well as his 2nd win tonight as a result of this victory. Carlos then 4/10 of a second back from Kaizen as they head up through turn 4. Behind them, Becco is still right behind Kedley, but again, he's got the same issue really as a lot of the drivers do, in that the driver in front of him has got DRS as well. So it's just so difficult to pull a move and make it stick. Through 14 and 15, Carlos has made a bit of an error, and that's a chance, isn't it, for Embandro now. Down towards turn 1, Carlos has lost a bit of momentum. Embandro getting closer to the Mercedes, but I think Carlos has recovered just about to retain 3rd position in this race. 3 laps to go in Bahrain. Lorenzo on lap 27, looking to just see out these final few laps in the lead of this race. 11 seconds clear of Kaizen. The gap is coming down slightly, but Lorenzo doesn't need to push. He's just stroking his car home and getting it to the end of this race. That's all he needs to do. Doesn't need to take any unnecessary risks here. Meanwhile, Butzells gets past Daz Parker and up into 11th place for Haas. He's 27.5 seconds back from Jack Bowie, so he won't catch him. Jack himself is 5 seconds behind Mystery, and he is still engulfed in this battle with Jammy. Becco continues to hunt down the Kedley for P6. It's, as I say, another one of those frustrating evenings for Becco tonight. An evening that started out so well and ends with disappointment. It has been the story of his season so far. It's been so unlucky for Becco. Misfortune seems to be following him around, but eventually that first win's got to come at some point in the final few rounds of the season, surely, for Becco. All the talent and so much pace, but unfortunately things just seem to go pear-shaped one way or another every other weekend, every other evening for him, every other Tuesday night. Down towards turn 1 then comes Carlos. 5/10 back from Kaizen, and so really Carlos's hopes of a podium are pretty much dashed now, because his penalty will take him behind Embandro as Jack Bowie comes in the pits and gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. which actually will put him behind Butzel's in the end. I think he was pitting to try and get the fastest lap of the race, but this penalty will cost him now, surely, as he makes his way out. He's on medium tyres. I don't know if he had any sets of softs left at his disposal. Surely if he did, he would have tried to bolt on a set of them. Butzel's down the home straight. Well, he is 7.3 behind Jack Bowie. Excuse me, 4.1 behind Jack Bowie. So, yeah, I think he might be okay, Jack, to... maybe not, actually. Maybe not, because, yeah, he's got a 5-second penalty. So that could be quite tough, actually, for him to keep hold of that position. Either way, Becco so close to Nakedli, who was all at sorts through 12 and into 13. There is contact between them. Becco will argue that Nakedli was too erratic going into turn 13. But either way, Lorenzo is on the final lap of the Bahrain Grand Prix. What a race it's been from him tonight. Carlos remains 0.7 of a second back from Kaizen, who has defended brilliantly. And Mpandro, as a result of all of this, will get his first podium finish of the season. Cavalis won't be too far off. In fact, he might just get... well, you know he won't, of course. He'll be P4, Cavalis. But he won't be on the podium tonight to take his first of the season. Lorenzo is about to become our second repeat winner of Season 7 in Tier 2. But Sales is right behind Jack Bowie going on to the final lap of this race. Meanwhile, Mystery is back ahead of Jammy. Is he? Jammy's got the inside on the exit of turn 4. And does he stay in front through 5, in towards 6? And he does get his McLaren back ahead. Does Jammy in towards turn 8. Mystery doesn't go for the move down the inside just yet. And that will possibly be that for the battle for 8th position. Here then comes Lorenzo. What a race it's been. Took the lead from Becco off the very start. The Ferrari involved in trouble into turn 1. Fell down the order, and since then Lorenzo has asserted absolute control and absolute dominance over this Grand Prix. It's the latest championship statement from Lorenzo. He's the second repeat winner of the season as he wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. Kaizen rounds the final corner for Aston Martin. It's a second place finish for him after a slightly disappointing qualifying really for him. Fantastic result at the end of it though. And Mpandro will take that final podium position away from Carlos because of his penalty. Cavalis in P4. Nokedli comes home for P6. Becco has to settle for 7th. Jammy beats Mystery to 8th. Jack Bowie will take 10th place on track. But 2.6 seconds ahead of Butzel's. He will fall to 11th position once his penalty for speeding in the pit lane is applied. Daz Parker, I think, is still ghosting actually, having lost connection. In fact, no, he's not ghosting. He has rejoined since then. So Butzel's then will take P10 for the Haas team. But it is Lorenzo for the second time this season who wins a Grand Prix. And he is our second repeat winner of Season 7 in Tier 2. He's been needing a pretty strong result for the last couple of rounds, has Lorenzo. I think there was still a little bit of annoyance from his being taken out of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix by the Ferrari of Becco. Whilst he was in contention for that win, and there was never any doubt that he was going to get the win here. What a win that is for Lorenzo with Mpandro and Kaizen joining him on the podium. 2 AlphaTauris on the podium tonight. What a result that is for them. Lorenzo taking the win from Kaizen. Mpandro in P3 in the second AlphaTauri car. So they have taken their first podium actually of the season. Cavalis in P4 Carlos P5, Nokedli in 6th place ahead of Becco, with Jammy in 8th position for McLaren. Mystery in P9, but Sells takes the P10 away from Jack Bowie after his penalty at the end. Both him and Becco involved in contact in the early stages. Daz Parker takes P12. It's Jay Hartnell in 13th place. Swinney in 14th. The Nivy, who was never actually in the race, really lost connection at the start. Down in P15. That is your lot for tonight. We'll be back next week after the turn of the new year 2023, where the Formula Racing League in Tier 2 will be coming to you live from Miami in Florida. One of the new additions to the Formula One calendar, and it will be the 9th round of the 7th season of Tier 2. Well, an outstanding race here tonight in Bahrain. Lorenzo, though, taking a dominant victory and making his latest championship statement in Tier 2. Until next week in Miami, take good care of yourselves. Have a very happy new year and good night.